Some cameras are so expensive that they can put you financially in the red, but even at $17,000, the RED 1 was one of the most affordable true digital cinema cameras when it was first released back in 2007. So even though it might be black, this one is the RED 1, so get ready to check out this one. It's easy to take for granted what you can get in a camera now. Even for a few $1,000s, you get something that is on paper and really in practical use better than this in every way. So let's look at this time capsule of digital cinema history, which is surprisingly not super outdated, even 16 years after its release. Now, if you're interested in cameras at all, you're probably at least somewhat familiar with RED. They make a lot of great stuff and they've had a huge impact on the film industry, but back in 2007, this was the one is appropriately their first camera, the RED 1, and this kind of changed everything because that price, that $17,000, while still being very expensive, wasn't totally out of the realm of affordability for working independent professionals or small production studios. And then of course, if you're talking about a big production studio, that's nothing. That's like basically free at that point. And $17,000 was for the camera only. To get it kind of up and running, you probably needed to spend over $20,000 really. Back in 2007, that was pretty unheard of for not just a good camera, but a 4K camera with some pretty impressive frame rates. It can do 4K 60 and it can also do 120 at 2K, which again, 2007, that's pretty amazing. And so you've probably seen work that this camera's done. It's been used on a lot of very well-known movies, award-winning stuff, things like The Social Network, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, a whole bunch of others, like Academy Award nominated and winning movies. It's a legit movie camera that has been used for actual movies. Now, fortunately, I did not have to pay $17,000+ for this camera. I paid $0 for this camera and then several hundred for some accessories to get it up and running. I really need to thank my friend Doc Rock. Check out his channel if you haven't already. He's great, especially if you need help with live streaming or Ecamm Live. His family owned a production company and they bought 2 of these when they were released back in 2007, but they've just kind of been hanging out for a while. So he gave me this one about a year ago and I've been using it and experimenting with it over the past year, but it's kind of only recently that I've got it fully up and running where without anything else, just this very lightweight package right here, this is a full up and running RED 1 at full resolution with maximum codecs and quality and everything. So this is definitely not a full technical review of a 16-year-old camera. If you want to know more in-depth about the tech specs of this camera, check out Caleb Pike's video because he did a pretty amazing one a while back that covers everything. Today, we're going to mainly be focusing on what the deal is with this camera, what it's like to get it up and running, and then of course we're going to do some comparisons and some filming with it, and I'll show you some examples from it so you can see what the quality is like from a real movie camera and compare that to some of the cameras that we have today. If you are interested in getting these up and running, you don't need to pay that $17,000 either. They are pretty readily available on eBay. The tricky part is just getting everything else you need to get it up and running. So what that means is let's take off everything that you don't get when you just get the basic camera. That includes this monitor. I have the original price list from when this camera was released, and this 5.6-inch LCD was $1,700. Of course, does not come with a battery. So every time you buy a modern camera that comes with a battery, be grateful for that. Actually, I don't think it even came with these rails. These were an add-on. Because there were a few different versions of this. Ones that came with just the camera, ones that came with shoulder mounts or other like cinema mounts to help you get set up. But I think they were assuming that if you were buying the camera at that level, you probably already had a lot of gear. And so unless you needed some of the very specific proprietary stuff, like these, which fit over the camera perfectly, then you probably didn't need any of that stuff. And of course, it's not going to come with a lens, but it will come with a PL lens mount. This has been adapted for Nikon, so it looks a little different than what you would get. But this is the camera here, the body of the camera. We've got a super 35mm sensor in there, and this thing is built like an absolute tank. The build quality is ridiculous. If you spent the money on this and you took it out of the box, you would definitely feel like, okay, I'm getting something for what I paid here. Oh, but you wouldn't get memory. We'll talk about that. This is simultaneously a very bare bones camera, but also pretty fully featured. The I/O on this is amazing. You not only have 4 audio inputs, but you have all kinds of different outputs. You have USB, HDMI, you have different ways to monitor everything, and it's all very easily accessible from the side here. The back of the camera is where you can connect power. You have a very basic LCD, which we'll talk about, some basic controls, your record buttons, and then some other playback controls, some sort of buttons you can kind of customize and use to go through the menus. And on the side over here, you've got a record button and then 2 custom buttons that you can set. And the bottom does have 1/4, 20, and 3/8 inch mounts there. I've been mounting it directly on a tripod, but you're probably gonna mount some other sort of plate or something. For your $17,000, this is kind of pretty much what you would get. Even something like the power adapter / battery charger would be extra. Something like this EVF, which is super cool. It comes in this blast-proof case here because it's the bomb, EVF. Even something like this, how much was this originally? This was $1,900. Now, fortunately, if you wanted to get a RED 1, you could find these on eBay, and a lot of them already come with accessories that people have built up over the years. But if you were just to get the camera itself, let's go through what you need to do to get it up and running. Then when it's up and running, let's talk about and look at what it can actually do. So when I got mine, because it had been living in Hawaii its whole life, and I live in the desert, and it had been in storage for a while, there was a little bit of corrosion that had built up. Since this is just metal, it's literally like if they had 4K cameras in World War II. But all of that metal and all of those metal parts does also then make it a little bit susceptible to, you know, corrosion and stuff over the years. So one thing I did was disassemble the whole thing, clean it out, replace pretty much most all of the screws and washers and little parts that had gotten rusted to try to restore it as much as possible. So if you got your camera and it's in working condition, let's talk about lenses. It will come with a PL mount. Originally, when I got this camera, I did rent a PL lens, which was super fun. That was like a legit cinema lens, and I really enjoyed it, even though at the time I couldn't use the camera's full resolution. But I definitely did not want to buy my own PL lens for just this one camera. So grateful that it came with a Nikon lens mount adapter. And then I just bought a Nikon, well, this is a Rokinon Nikon mount 35mm 1.5 cinema lens. There's no autofocus or anything, so fully manual is the way to go. And when you set the lens in, I don't know if it's just the way I've installed this adapter, but it doesn't really lock in like you're used to. It just sort of, you know, it sits there, but I can just turn it without pressing any releases. So you gotta be careful if you're taking on lens hoods or adding filters. It's very easy to accidentally disconnect the lens. Now, one thing you'll notice, there's no battery compartment. There's no battery compartments whatsoever. So you can run it off of something like this. You can run a power cord directly into the back, which is probably what you would do in a studio situation or on a long set. This is definitely not a run and gun setup. This is a set up and plan for it, a sit and set setup, but it can be powered by V-mount batteries, so I have one here. The problem I have had is there's nowhere to put the battery. RED did make a cradle thing that kind of stuck out the back, and you could put a battery and a big hard drive here to record your media and have your power in one spot. I don't have that, and they're basically impossible to find, so if your camera doesn't come with one, you're probably not going to find it. So that's why I like using the rails. These mounts for the rails add a ton of functionality, and I wouldn't want to have this camera without them because it would be really, really frustrating to use. I do have another thing that clamps on the bottom and gives you mounts for rails there too, so you could have rails on top and bottom if you want. But I don't want to derail our discussion by going too much into depth on that. And these also add some mounting options to the top. So this came with this top handle. It could go this way and give you more grip here, or it could go this way and be kind of more of, I don't know, that looks sleek. Almost looks like a bullet or something. But the reason I like doing it this way is because this has these 2 mounts right here, and I like the monitor to be right here. So if you happen to get one of these, whatever it comes with will definitely take a little bit of experimenting to see how you like to configure it and set it up. But it's just ultimately whatever works for you. So because now I have this here, now I have a handle, I have these super strong rails, I can attach my V-mount battery. I was able to find this really awesome little small rig adapter. This is just a jaw clip, but with a V-mount mount on it. It doesn't transfer power or anything, but I can just attach this right here and then clip the battery in. It holds it nice and secure, and now I've got the battery on this side, which I like because I don't want to block any of the ports and stuff on that side because those ports are important. And then I've just been running a D-tap cable from the back of the camera into the battery, and now I have power for the camera. powerful. In order to see what's actually happening, that's kind of important. Fortunately, I do have the viewfinder, but again, figuring out ways to mount things on this is a little weird. So I have this set up. This is a SmallRig monitor mount and then an iFootage articulating arm. I really like the iFootage arms because they're so strong. I like this because there's 2 mounting points, which means the monitor's not going to come loose or swivel. And now, if I press this power button, we should see the camera spring to life. Look at that. And by spring to life, I mean take about a minute or more to boot up. Quite a long initialization process that it has to go through, but that's okay. Again, this is not a run and gun setup. It's something that you turn on when you plan to turn it on, and you probably leave it running, probably attached to some sort of external power. There we go. That took over a minute to start up, but now we have our camera, it's powered on, we've got our lens, and we are ready to go film. Except I have no way of recording from this. So let's talk about the area where I struggled and you will struggle the most if you decide to get a RED camera. And that is memory and media, because this is why I don't think I would ever personally buy a RED camera, even though they're awesome quality and they do a lot of great things. This is stupid, and the way RED handles their media is stupid. There's no other way to describe it. You do have an HDMI output, so you can connect this to an external recorder or a capture card or something and capture an image. You could stream with a RED camera if you wanted to, but that's not going to give you the full quality raw 4K output that you probably want from a camera like this. You need some kind of memory, and the thing about RED memory is they only let you use their specific proprietary memory, which is annoying, but in and of itself, not really the end of the world, except when they stop making memory for one of their cameras and the existing memory that's out there is failing because it was just old mechanical hard drives and CF cards that were crazy expensive. So there's 2 primary ways of recording media with this camera. One is with the RED magazine, which is like an external hard drive, and those went up pretty high in capacity. I think they had a 320 gigabyte one, which in 2007, pretty amazing. The problem is, those are mechanical hard drives from 2007, and very few of them actually exist in working order anymore. So if you find one, chances are it's not even going to work or be reliable for that long. So you probably have to stick to CF cards, which pretty much only come in 16 or 8 gigabyte varieties. And even though these are more reliable than mechanical hard drives, I did have to buy several of them off eBay before I finally found one that actually worked. Now, why this is so frustrating is because I don't live in 2007 anymore. I don't know if you know that. I don't know where you are, but I don't live in 2007 anymore. I live in the future, where we have amazing SSDs like this, where for under $100 you can get multiple terabytes of storage in an SSD that far outperforms anything from 2007. And one of my favorite things about this camera is how serviceable it is physically. So what I thought would be a really great thing to do would just be to unscrew this cover right here. All that's in here is a very small card reader. So when you pop your card in here, this is just reading and writing to the card and then sending it out to the computer. This connector though is exactly the same as what you will find on a lot of internal SSDs. Without any other modifications, I can connect it here. And now I've got a terabyte of solid state storage for the RED one. I even 3D printed a cover that fits on here and holds this in place. And I thought everything would be great, except that this is not officially supported. So when you turn the camera on, you're going to get this message right here that says the CF card has not been speed verified for use on this camera. Only 2K resolution recordings are possible. There is an unquantifiable risk of drop frames. Unquantifiable risk. We need to use old mechanical hard drives and CF cards, not something like this super reliable solid state drive. That would be silly, unquantifiably silly. So what this means is it will let you record to something like an external drive, but it's going to limit your resolution to only 2K. And not only that, but you can only use the lowest quality codec. So it's fun to mess around with, and that's how I've been using this camera for most of the time that I've had it. And while you can still get an image that looks great, it's not the thing where you're not getting the same image that those Academy Award winning movies were using. So when you're buying a camera that's like this was used to make real movies with, you're not getting the image quality that was used in those real movies. So the only way around that is to use actual official RED memory. And now, since I have mitigated those unquantifiable risks, I can now shoot up to 4.5K raw footage at the highest codec, highest resolution. I can access all of the awesome capabilities of this camera and get significantly better footage. Now, at first, this might seem like a pretty niche complaint about an old camera, but this is something that RED still does. They're still very picky about memory and how things work. There was a big controversy several years ago. I'll put a link in the description to the article so you can check it out for yourself, but there were a lot of videos and articles about it where people were basically finding that even in modern RED cameras, those super expensive proprietary RED SSDs and storage devices were just the same as this. They're just consumer grade hard drives and storage that you can buy, and they're just sort of labeled as being RED and something specific. Now, RED is their own company. They can be proprietary if they want to, but where this really becomes a problem is with a camera like this, when it gets to a point where they stop supporting it, but the camera itself still works fine. It's not as easy to use as modern cameras. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but this is still a great camera, and you can get it for a relatively reasonable price. But they no longer make any of the memory for it. So you have to scrounge the internet and back alleys to try to get some kind of working memory. And at some point in the future, since they don't make them anymore, all of those mechanical hard drives and all of those CF cards are going to be unavailable or broken. And that means all of these awesome cameras aren't going to be able to be used to their full potential just because of that. So at the very least, when I boot this up, it says the most recent firmware was from 2013, which is pretty awesome. So they supported it from 2007 till at least 2013. At some point, when they need to stop making proprietary things for their cameras, at that point, at least, it would be cool to have a final firmware update that then lets you use other things. Put the little quantum risk warning on screen and let me understand that if I'm not using something official, I will not hold RED responsible if it loses my footage or whatever. I'm really glad that there are other more affordable options out there now, because it's almost like they tried to be the Apple of the camera world and have this closed off ecosystem. But that to me does not fly in the world of production stuff, where a lot of stuff needs to be modular and interchangeable, and you want to invest in something and be able to use it and support it for many years to come. That is my RED rant. All ranting aside, let's talk about now how to use this camera and all the cool stuff that it can do. Apologies if you hear fan noise because it is a little bit loud. You don't technically need a viewfinder or a screen. You can operate everything through the rear LCD, but this is a very, very basic LCD, and the menu is a little bit cryptic. I wouldn't even blame RED for that. It was 2007. This is a digital 4K camera. Nobody knew what the heck to do to make things make sense. So going through here and trying to adjust menu settings is very confusing. As soon as you have it connected to a monitor, then it makes a lot more sense. And even without an instruction manual, you can poke around and figure out how things work. This is pretty archaic, some of the buttons back here, but I actually really like the little selector knob because it's a joystick, it's also a button, and it's also a dial all in one. So it gives you a lot of flexibility when navigating through the menus. On the back of the camera here, you have three main sort of sections in your menu. You have sensor, video, and system. If you go into system, that's where you're going to start being able to adjust things like sound, media, your project settings, monitor, and setups. That's like the camera system. Video includes everything for video, but also audio. So technically it's the audio video menu, even though the button just says video. And then sensor is where you can then adjust things like your ISO, your color temperature, shutter speed. Basically, anytime you see a little red arrow going down, that means you can push the joystick down to go into that menu. You can move around in it. You can sort of see what you have selected here and then twist the dial to change it. And to get back out of that menu, you just lift up on that dial and it brings you back to the top level menu. We can go into things like ISO and change the ISO sensitivity all the way up to ISO 2000. So not quite at the level of something like the A7S III, but close. There's no stabilization, no built-in ND filters, so having the camera stabilize is going to reduce a lot of those micro jitters that you're going to get. Putting an ND filter or a matte box on your lens is probably going to be something that's important too. What's really cool though is as you dig through this menu, you can create user profiles, you can assign the couple of custom buttons that are there, you can install LUTs, you can apply LUTs. So there is a lot of cinema camera functionality, stuff that you'd still want on modern cameras, built right in here from the beginning. This is where you can go into your media. Very important. Always go into this menu and unmount the media before you take it out. Don't just disconnect it because the camera will freak out if you do that. And there's an unquantifiable risk of bad things happening. Now the different resolutions you have on here, 4.5K is the max, and that is pretty amazing. You have a 4K anamorphic mode, you have 4K 16:9, 4K HD, don't really know what that is, 4K 2:1, 3K anamorphic, 3K 16:9, 3K 2:1, 2K anamorphic, 2K 16:9, and 2K 2:1. If I have something like this connected, I'm not able to select most of these, but because I have the CF card in here, I can select everything that the camera can do. So I've just been maxing it out. Here's another issue that pops up with memory. Right now, you can sort of see in this sample shot you can sort of see the edge of my door here and a little bit of just sort of some whiteboard stuff over here. This shot's not important, but just for the framing at 4.5K, that's the full 4K sensor that's in the camera. If you're using unsupported memory, it bumps you all the way down to 2K, which then crops in on the sensor. So now I can't see the edge of the door, I can't see over here anymore. Now that super 35mm sensor becomes almost, I don't know, like a micro four thirds sensor or something. It becomes so cropped in, it makes things much more difficult to use. So if you want to use the full readout of the sensor, you need to be in one of the non-2K resolutions, and the only way to do that with official RED memory. So now that we've got the camera set up and we're looking at our resolutions, you've been seeing some sample footage throughout this, but let's really look at how this camera looks. I'm using the Sony FX3 right now, but I would like to switch over to the RED 1. This is a 35mm lens on a super 35 sensor, so the shot and framing aren't going to match up at all, but here's the Sony FX3, and this one is the RED 1. I tried to match the settings in camera so it's got the same white balance as my other camera, as the Sony FX3. It has the same shutter speed, its ISO is at 320, but working with the footage is very different. For as much grief as I've been giving RED for making things difficult and all the proprietary madness, this part I need to give them a lot of credit for. You can't spell credit without RED. You do need special RED Cine X software to import the footage and adjust it, but fortunately that software is free. I'll put a link in the description, and it works great. It's a really cool way to fine-tune your footage and get it ready for importing into your editor of choice. So what I've been doing is putting all the footage in there, adjusting it the way I like, trying to work with it as best I can, and then saving it and putting it into Final Cut Pro. So what I can say really is if this footage doesn't look great, we know that this camera is capable of great things. So if the colors are weird or something, it's definitely on me, it's not on the camera. But I hope, since we're recording at 4.5K, we're using a good lens, we're in a decent environment, I hope this is giving you some sort of idea of what the quality is like that you can get from this camera. And if it's anything comparable to the FX3 over here, just remember that this camera was released 14 years before the FX3. So it's pretty impressive that you can get this level of quality from something that is honestly just so old. And it does show you how ahead of the game this camera was and how revolutionary it was. Red-volutionary this camera was at the time. This is as wide as I can go with this lens, so this feels like kind of an awkward shot, but it's as wide as I can go with this lens. Fortunately, I can mix in other sample shots so you can see what it might look like if you're not just doing this one kind of super awkward shot here. Did we fill up the memory card? What happened there? And if you're wondering how much space 16 gigabytes on a memory card will get you, I just ran out of space, and pretty much I cut nothing out of what you saw. That was about what fit on there at the highest resolution, along with a few sample clips. 16 gigabytes for 4.5K raw footage is not great. Sure would be awesome if we could use some kind of external drive for that. It has been really fun to work with this camera and to learn about it, both for sort of understanding how far things have come, because when DSLRs could start shooting video and cameras became kind of affordable for mere mortals, I still couldn't afford them at all. So it was still several years before I got my first DSLR that could film video. And so I only read about cameras like these, and I never thought it'd be something that I'd actually get to use. So to be able to work with this and have fun with it and experiment with it is pretty amazing. And the cooler part is that they are pretty easy to find online. If you have $1,500 to $2,000 that you're willing to drop on an old cinema camera, you can get a full-on RED 1 or RED 1 MX setup and have a lot of fun with it. And, you know, You could always, if you do client work, you could always tell them that you have a RED. So ultimately, I hope this was fun. I hope this was interesting, and I hope that, I don't know, we just got to spend some time talking about a cool camera together. And speaking of things that are cool, thank you to everyone who helps support my channel through Patreon and YouTube channel memberships. And I do have another video that's all about the super strange Canon L1, the very first interchangeable lens camcorder, along with a video on my second channel that I made using a very old television broadcast tape camera.